Look, if your business only works when absolutely everything goes exactly according to plan, you don't actually have a business. What you have is a fragile mechanism that's just relying on luck. So many organizations out there operate under this assumption that their current success is proof of their brilliant operational strength. But in reality, they might just be sailing on favorable winds. In this explainer, we're going to dig into a pretty brutal reality. If your system requires perfect conditions to function, it is already broken.
Think about the old way of running things. It's what you might call a system that only works in the sunshine. And what exactly does that mean? Well, it means your sales system works great, but only because demand is naturally growing. Your delivery process works, sure, but only when deadlines are flexible. Your customer service seems fine, as long as customers are endlessly patient. You might look around and think, hey, we always deliver, we always find a way. But honestly, this creates a really dangerous illusion. Your business only looks reliable because your environment is being forgiving. And let's be clear, sunshine is not a business model.
This whole illusion is powered by something called an environmental subsidy. Basically, an environmental subsidy is a favorable external or human condition, things like unusually high demand, weak competitors, or maybe just a highly experienced team that temporarily absorbs the cost of your operational weaknesses. They're just hiding your systemic flaws. They aren't fixing them. The real danger kicks in when leadership starts misinterpreting these temporary, lucky protections as permanent operational strength.
Now, growth is arguably the most powerful disguise of all. Think about it. When revenue is constantly rising, a company can blindly tolerate all sorts of garbage. Incredibly inefficient acquisition, messy manual onboarding, way too many internal meetings, weak margins, you name it. Because new revenue just keeps arriving, the organization falsely concludes, hey, our strategy works. But growth isn't actually proving the strength of the system. It's simply financing the defects.
Time does the exact same thing. Having a slow, clumsy process might still produce a perfectly acceptable result if absolutely nobody is in a hurry. In this case, time becomes a hidden repair budget. Say a document is incomplete, but somebody has 3 days to fix it before the big meeting. Or a mistake is discovered, but hey, the delivery date can just be postponed. The process just consumes more time whenever something goes wrong. And this creates this totally false impression that because the outcome was eventually delivered, the system itself must work.
And then, of course, we have the human element. Relying on your employees to remember forgotten details or having founders constantly jump in to manually rescue projects, sure, that might work for a small team of unusually responsible people, but goodwill operations instantly collapse under volume. Goodwill is not standardization. Heroic manual correction by your staff is not quality assurance. If your workflow only survives because talented people are constantly running around repairing it behind the scenes, that workflow is absolutely not scalable.
The core flaw here actually isn't that people make mistakes. Mistakes are entirely normal. People forget things, they get distracted, they get overwhelmed, they misunderstand instructions. That's just being human. A modern, robust business system has to expect this normal human behavior. The whole role of the system is to preserve value despite those completely predictable limitations. So you have to design your standards in a way that forgetting a detail or getting interrupted by an urgent message doesn't automatically destroy the final outcome for your customer.
So what happens when a system fails during a moment of urgency? Leadership almost always blames the urgency, right? They blame the customer for being impatient, or they blame an aggressive competitor. But listen to this. Urgency and competition do not create operational flaws. They literally just strip away the subsidies we've been talking about. Pressure doesn't break the system. Pressure just reveals the weakness that was already sitting there.
And this brings us to a pretty harsh reality about how we evaluate our own operations. A lot of businesses judge themselves heavily on their good intentions. The team tried so hard, the employees really cared, the founder stayed late. Now, intentions might matter ethically, sure, but they absolutely do not prove operational performance. A pressure-proof system can only ever be judged on outcomes. Did the customer actually receive measurable value? Was it delivered on time? And was undeniable proof of that value captured?
The truth is, the old operating system survives on one very dangerous, magical word, and that word is later. We'll document the workflow. Later. We'll tighten up the standard. Later. We'll collect the proof. Later. We'll fix the process. Later. Every single time you say later, you are accumulating operational debt. You are just increasing your dependence on memory and goodwill and manual recovery. And in modern markets, later is exactly where you lose. Why? Because the environment is going to change long before you ever get around to actually correcting your system.
So what's the antidote to this dangerous dependency? It's the -1 price tag. The -1 guarantee is essentially the ultimate truth mirror for your business. It violently kills the option to postpone structural correction.
Under -1, the penalty exists right now. The standard must exist right now. The proof has to be designed right now. It forces this absolute present accountability. It cuts right through all those nice intentions and demands actual, measurable outcomes today.
Let's break down how this -1 standard actually works. It basically converts vague intentions into an immediate operational commitment. It demands 4 things. First, you clearly define the value you're promising. Second, you define the exact proof that demonstrates that value actually arrived. Third, you define what counts as missing that value. And fourth, and this is crucial, you accept a penalty if you miss that mark. If there's no consequence, correction can always be postponed. The -1 standard replaces "we'll fix it later" with an immediate, non-negotiable commitment.
So, the big question is, how do we actively evaluate a business system before we scale it? How do we make sure it doesn't just work in the sunshine? Well, you have to run a controlled operational stress test. We call this the pressure-proof business test. You really don't want to wait for a sudden crisis or a massive market shift to find out your system is fragile. You need to test it yourself, strictly under your own terms.
This diagnostic framework is pretty straightforward. First, you start by identifying and completely removing the sunshine. You know those favorable conditions we talked about that are protecting your process? Once you define the exact value and the required proof, you intentionally apply controlled pressure. Maybe you reduce the available recovery time, or you test a handoff when a key person is absent. Doing this instantly exposes where the team is secretly relying on later or just human memory. Then you judge the actual outcome against your defined proof, and you redesign those failure points long before you try to scale.
Now, I want to be extremely clear about what we are doing here. Controlled pressure is not chaos. This stress test must be ethical, limited, and observable. You do not overload your employees until they break. You do not do anything that harms your customers. You don't create artificial, chaotic emergencies without proper safeguards. The entire design of this test is just to expose structural weaknesses, unclear ownership, and missing information. It is absolutely not designed to punish your people.
When you run this test, absolutely everything hinges on one central diagnostic question. Did the system deliver, or did people rescue it? When you remove the founder from that important onboarding call, or when you tighten the deadline, or when your senior consultant is out sick, does the system actually hold, or does it degrade into a frantic scramble of heroic improvisation? If rescue work is your normal state, you do not have a resilient system. You are just borrowing reliability from your people.
And if your system fails this pressure test, you are facing a pretty brutal reality. But listen to me, a failed pressure test is not a reason to add more volume. Adding volume to a failed system only amplifies the defects. Do not respond to this by immediately hiring more people or buying some flashy new software tool or just demanding everyone work harder. You have to identify exactly why the system failed and redesign those specific points of failure, the bottlenecks, the undocumented handoffs, the vague promises, before you even think about scaling.
This is the core of the -1 diagnostic process, which operates on the principles found in Neg Book. It gives you a highly practical, strategic way to examine your business. We systematically identify your promised outcomes, we uncover those hidden environmental subsidies that are giving you a false sense of security, and we expose those dangerous later dependencies by running a controlled pilot test. Basically, you are testing your business with a negative price standard before the market violently forces the issue on you. I strongly encourage leaders to take this incredibly seriously. Please, stop waiting for the market to perform the stress test for you. You can apply for the NegBook diagnostic right now at negbook.com/negative-price-standard. Stop relying on your team's sheer exhaustion to cover up your process flaws. Stress test your delivery right now and intentionally build a business that works precisely when the world isn't sunshine. I want to leave you with a stark, unavoidable truth that really summarizes everything we've covered in this explainer. If your business requires perfect conditions, endlessly patient customers, infinite time, and absolutely flawless human memory just to deliver basic value, you do not have a robust operation. So you have to ask yourself, what hidden subsidies are propping up your operations today? Because a real business should not need the world to cooperate.